I grew up just assuming my role as a female, like I will have children, I will get married. I didn't think much past that. I've always been interested in art and animals and land, but it never really crossed my mind as a kid, like what a career path is or anything. I just kind of lived, I had a lovely childhood, being interested in the land, being curious. But then I went to college, was a BFA in sculpture, then started teaching art in different, mostly rural schools. And I just like noticed every day I would get asked if I have children, especially by the young girls in these schools and the other female teachers. It just was like this obsession, and I don't have children, I can't have kids, and it was like moving through my 20s, I just realized like I had this plan that isn't going to happen, like it's completely out of my control, and so the further I've gotten in my life, and like that's been a reality, but then I'm like in this world that it's like so shocking to a 16-year-old girl, like you don't have kids, don't you want kids? And it has made me think like, do I actually want kids, or is it just something I always felt expected? So that's kind of led me to a lot of what I'm dealing with my work is like, how do we come up with these systems of like how fertility defines something's value? How does it define a human's value? How does it define animals, the plants, the land? So that's really kind of the broader scope I've wanted to explore. I don't want my work to just be about like female fertility. I don't think that it's just a female perspective or issue. So I really want to try and look bigger picture and investigate and like figure out why we are so driven towards like reproduce, production. And it's really made me start looking into like manifest destiny and just this rhetoric around like progress. Just everything's like always up and to the right. We always have to be making progress, and how reproduction, fertility is oftentimes associated with progress. So that's kind of where I started my grad experience. So this was the first piece I did, these two, and then they felt like they needed to be together. This is Big Country. I saw this story on Instagram from a ranch back in my home county, and these are the words that were the script on the Instagram post, just about like this prize stud. He'd been in the family for 15 years, given them like countless sperm, made tons of offspring. He was just like the perfect specimen, and then had an accident and couldn't reproduce. So they put him down. He just took up too much resources. So it just made me think about, and then it very like macabrely talked about, so we made a mount and put him in our house. And I think it's like sad and funny at the same time, just thinking about like if we did that with humans, like, oh, they can't reproduce anymore, they take up too much space and resources. So this was kind of the start of my paintings, and it's kind of weird, like this one and another outside are kind of mid-journey. So I don't know, I'll kind of like jump into this one, and then we'll talk kind of bounce back to these ideas. But I've kind of, and I wanted to transition, I want to develop it, like this feels to me like autobiographical, and I want it bigger than just like searching for my place in this world. I want to think about like this place, and like if other people have similar thoughts, or like why maybe West Texas or just like small areas have this attitude. So this is kind of an exploration of place, and it's a mythical city of luck, but it definitely resembles a specific city we all know. And just thinking of all the toil we do with the land, and just thinking about capitalism, and this is an appropriation of the painting Westward, The Course of Empire by Emmanuel Lutz. But then I was reading about like treasure hunters And that's what a lot of the symbols around the frame are. They're different symbols. If you're like out treasure hunting, like still in Texas, you can find these symbols and it means like the treasure's just around this rock, or it's under this tree to the left. So I thought that was really interesting. Just again, this like constant quest for like riches and progress, and we like just toil with the land at the expense of the land, at the expense of animals and others. It has a heavy influence by the story of Coronado searching for Cibola, the city of gold, and this guide, myth has it, El Turk like led them in circles until the army died, or was like dying off, not the whole army died, but then this garrote, I don't know how to pronounce it, was put around El Turk's neck until he suffocated. So that's the account I read. And so yeah, just again, thinking of like, just why are we like this? Like, why do we need like, or want to just like hurt everything in this like name of progress? And so we can move outside now. Yeah.
And be there. It's Saturday at 14, 10 to 11. I'm going to say this everywhere.
Okay. I feel like everybody's speed up a little, but these two that were done at the same time, and they were kind of also a challenge to, before I came to grad school, I was working a lot with this kind of ambiguous space, like very textile oriented. So I was trying to think about that part of my practice. Do I want to abandon that, or how can I tie it in with more like of the research I'm doing? So that was one I'm thinking a little more formally. This is kind of, it's still first semester, but also about like Texas icons, mythologies, thinking about like Greek mythology, the shells, and then like old ocean. So that one, seashells of Texas, thinking about like petroleum. Again, just like all the different modes of toiling with this land, trying to get rich schemes. This one is all, almost all things that grew in my home county. It was a farming community, and there was a watermelon farm, peanut farm, cantaloupe, honeydew, pecan orchards. So just thinking, but none of them are native and species, except, and I mean, I could be challenged on this, but the Osage orange, I think, is one of the only, if not the only thing that grows native here, and it's poisonous to a lot, or not necessarily poisonous, but like nothing wants to eat it. I've experienced that, like trying to feed my horse that growing up, like they don't, like it smells nice, it looks really pretty, but nothing really eats an Osage orange that I found. So it's just interesting, like again, just all these like constant quests to put on the land what we think it should be doing, what's desirable, why do we consider some things desirable, others not. And of course there's kind of, let's see, euphemisms here, I don't, like allegory of dealing with my own infertility experience, feeling like a piece of meat when you go to the doctor, oftentimes, and so yeah, that's those two. And then the final piece around here is the landed gentry. I don't know if you can all fit, but it's the most recent one, and I haven't really talked about it with many people. I still like don't know how I feel about it, but it was just an exploration of like modern day ranchers, and these are like some of the largest landowners in Texas in the Four Corners. And then I was looking at different tribes that I grew up believing they were like extinct tribes of indigenous people in Texas. But of course, in my research, I was finding more that like looking at Karangua, like I grew up in Texas history, like there's no more Karangua, but then there are. So I was trying to kind of deal with the colonization ideas I've grown up with, like what's true, what's not, just reckoning with like land ownership, all these brands are ranches, and the arrows represent a Wahoo board, which I grew up playing, and then like now I'm realizing there's like racist roots in that game. Also, it just like teaches children, like again, it's like progress, like always gotta be moving, like being productive. And then the base layer, the little like black images are, I just copied, I projected a map, a literary map of Texas. And you can look it up, it's got like different little icons that are different stories that have been influential in Texas, whether fiction or not, different Texas authors. It's really fun to look at, but I was just thinking about how these stories, these mythologies are really what has created this like iconic like Texas idea. And just me trying to unpack like what I grew up believing and learning versus like different people's perspectives, like what's true, can we find truth, like does it exist, or how do we move forward? So, yeah, I don't know where we are on
No, yeah, we got 15 minutes, so we can go into questions, but if you have like one more thing to say, you can.
I feel done.
Okay, that's good. Well, yeah. Okay, do we have any questions, insights about her work? I guess one thing, have you thought about, well, you talked about fertility with this one, and when you said that, all of a sudden I thought about how, my mom's a nurse in L&D, and so a big practice is like, it's the size of a grapefruit. Like the baby becomes this other thing. And so like, is that something you were thinking about when you were sitting there like, oh, I don't know, 6 months, it's a watermelon, I don't know.
No, I feel like because I've seen that and stuff, but I have never like personally connected with like avocado, like, you know, I think when people go through being pregnant, they do like connect. I did not personally connect it to that, but I like the different ways I've had conversations with people, because like there's so much of that world I don't know. So
Yeah. Well, I think it relates back to like, I think like women become trees and they're producing fruit. And so like, that's what weirds me out about it.
yeah.
I don't know, I just think it's interesting and thinking about like what makes a woman. When I was doing research about queer theory and trans identity, there was a time when you had to remove your uterus and your ovaries and all that to be considered F to M. Like you couldn't have children to be a man, like, and so if you were born, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
and so it's interesting to think about how like that became part of what makes a woman, their ability to have children. And so like, I don't know, there's something interesting there that I didn't think about before when I just saw your work, but now I'm thinking about it and relating it to the cows even, like that ability to have children gives you worth. And so
Yeah.
like he was worthless, so he was put down.
Yeah.
No, and it's just interesting because does that mean he's less of a cow and that's why he was put down? Like, so it's interesting to think about like how we perceive womanness. I don't know if that's a good word, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So I've heard you talk about it a couple of times, and just now really connecting this idea of fertility with forward progress in the sense that we always have to be moving forward, we have to be growing, the population has to be growing, the cities have to be growing, and we're all reaching the realization that that's actually for us all.
Yeah.
So where do you see yourself going with these ideas? Because I'm really intrigued with this shift. Like the fertility part, I understand, but when I think of it in terms of this sort of impetus for forward progress, I think that's where it starts to make a connection for me.
I would love to get with other like fertility specialists, with animals, with humans, the land, and like compare data. I really do want like hard answers, how we connect some things like fecundity to its worth, and that's like some things I'm still pursuing. Like why do we think of coyotes, or like say rabbits? They are very prolific, and so they have no season. You can kill them at will, but then like cattle are actually really hard hard to breed. And so, and I mean, of course, they also have meat as a value, but it's kind of part of, like, elephants, they are difficult to breed, and they have a really long gestation. So we kind of have this attitude of, like, they're more precious than a bunny. So, yeah, like, how we have a lot of contradictions, and I'm really interested, like, why is it, like, just societal? Is it like nature versus nurture kind of thing I'm interested in pursuing going forward? And I'm also, like, I have shifted a lot with my practice. I'm really interested in, like, rural Texas and the Great Plains, and I just, like, maybe just want to find, like, I'm on a quest to kind of find the, like, the source of the unhappiness, if you will, or, like, the source of, like, why we constantly have to move forward, and specifically in this place.
Kirstyn, I want to redirect to your aesthetic and formal decision making. There's so thank you for your talk. It was great. I just happen to really like the questions that you're asking. Very compelling. In the way that you design and execute paintings, there's a lot of pleasantness in, like, the appearance and style of your work. There's a lot of symmetry. There are things that remind me of quilts, like you said, board games, things that could almost look like they could be illustrations in a storybook, could almost be for children. So I'm interested in hearing you talk about that and how you use that to sort of interrogate what is, as I understand it, a political discourse that's actually gathered quite a bit of speed, which is the anti-progress movement, which I don't know that much about. It's been kind of esoteric for some time, but is, I think, one of their sort of precepts is this famous quote that I will get wrong. It's like, you know, the imperative toward infinite, you know, and endless proliferation is the ethic of a cancer. That's what cancers do. That's not what a civilization should do. So I want to hear you talk about the style and the design and the look of your paintings, and then also where you find yourself if a critic or an attendee of a show of yours wanted to hear you sort of situate yourself in relation to a very real political dialogue.
I think the formal quality, especially the, like, Cibola and this one, I started moving into, like, thinking more about material and process than I was the first semester. It was very pictorial, like oil paint on canvas. And then I was looking at Titus Kafar, who, like, cuts into the canvas, this, like, object. And so I was inspired with Cibola to do that, cut out the animals, like, remove them from their, like, little comfy landscape, because that's what we often do with them. And using, like, fabric from my grandma's sewing room. And this one, too, just this, like, concept of craft coming back into my work that I've, like, haven't used for a long time. I took sewing lessons with my grandma. She was constantly frustrated with me. I was terrible at it. So just kind of, I like that it's roughly, like, cut. I'm not good at measuring things because I'm not patient enough. This is a quilt pattern. It's called the double friendship quilt pattern. So I just liked the irony, kind of these figures and like Texas, like drive friendly, just all these, like, oxymorons we have. So I do think the, like, prettiness, like femininity, if you will, does, like, come from a place of, like, reconnecting with a childhood, like, of, like, sewing and, like, liking pastel colors and whatnot. I think also it's important to me to connect to the people I grew up with visually, like really digestible imagery. I like you saying it could even be like a children's book, and I think that isn't something I don't want to abandon. I want to, like, challenge it and develop it, but I always want to be able to have conversations with someone from my hometown about my work, like easily recognizable imagery, but then maybe there's kind of like an underbelly that asks questions. And I think, and yeah, just being inspired by like doing textiles. Before coming to grad school, I would like do a painting and then have it turned into a scarf or a bandana, and I think that's still a heavy part of my work. But as far as like politically, I really just want to like always be in a position that my work is asking questions and not really making a statement per se, but I would need to learn more about the anti-progress movement. It sounds really interesting to me, but I don't know much about like an actual like movement. But yeah, I think right now I just want to like continue exploring this place and like what makes it tick.
I have a question, and maybe it's a question, half question, half comment, half I need to learn a little bit more. I feel like the iconography that you use in the aesthetics of your painting really recall like some famous Texas painters, and I think they're all men. Have you thought, you have a statement or a comment about how you're like situating yourself in this aesthetic as a woman?
Yeah, I definitely grew up going to the Amy Carter. I was like 45 minutes from Fort Worth, so we'd go every year. And I really have always loved Remington's work, but I mean, I've been diving more into it, and just that kind of like progress and this like go west young man like attitude that I didn't really realize like land is political when I'm looking at these artworks as a little girl and like all these male artists. I still see Western art as like still in that same place in a lot of ways. It just like in a lot of ways has not moved on in the like Western genre, like cowboy genre. So I really would love to be able to enter that world and like mix it up. But I do feel like as soon as you try and mix it up, you're like a different genre. You just like are no longer a Western artist. I mean, I am looking a lot at the women that are in the Women Reframe American Landscape exhibition. They're like talking about the Hudson River School and how there were women in that. And I had no idea until earlier this year that there was a Susie Barstow exhibition. It was in 2022, the very first female of the Hudson River School solo exhibition. I mean, posthumously, but it's and then these like Women Reframe the American Landscape, that exhibition at the Thomas School event is women that are challenging landscape, challenging borders and maps. Kirstyn Wright, who's just at Science Santa Fe. I've been reading a lot of her. Like I love how she talks about land and place as a Latin American woman, and so that's where I want to position myself. But I also do want it to go into like really classic like Western cowboy genre because I want like different representation and different opinions and just
One thing, like from Guy's comment, it made me think about, have you thought about mortality and immortality in your work? Because there's an interesting way you talked about craft, and through the sort of generational passing down, it makes that craft immortal and it lives forever. But in a way, like your inability to recreate it makes it mortal again. And I think there's something interesting in that. And also thinking about mortality and immortality and the idea of reproduction. By him having 1 million kids, that cow is immortal in a way. But I always think of immortality as actually like a kind of death. Like plastic is immortal in a way because it doesn't die. And so like, but that makes it like less alive to me. So have you thought about like these sort of tensions between those concepts? Hopefully that makes sense. Sorry if it doesn't.
No, it does. It kind of makes my mind go in a bunch of different directions. I think I've thought about it in different ways. Like the Cibola one, I was really thinking about like just the land, like this haboob and like tornadoes and things like this land is like rough and it's not like suitable for life in a lot of like human life in a lot of ways, and yet we like force it. This like city of gold out here, and so I think of like mortality and immortality in that way. Like this land kind of wants to kill us, but we're like forcing ourselves on it, trying to like kill it. So kind of in that way. Actually, reading Braiding Sweetgrass though has shifted my mindset a lot on like the land wants to kill us and this like apocalyptic like futures Western. Like I'm still interested in that, but I do think like sometimes it is a relationship. The land like sometimes does benefit from cultivation. Anyway, and then I think about like the reproductive side of it, like. And I don't want to be like, I can't speak for other people, but I have wondered how much like of wanting to have children is just a desire to want to like continue like our line and a sense of immortality and like put our stamp on the world, like see ourselves in this like little copy. So I do think a lot about that, but I don't know.
No, something to think about. Yeah, it's all good. You answered it.
Okay.
It wasn't really a question. Any other last questions or notes? Or whatever?
Thank you so much. I love hearing you visit about your work. Just FYI, Robin Wall-Kimmerer, author of Braiding Sweetgrass, Texas Tech is bringing her in. She's going to do a virtual talk in February. So it's a great book. And there's reading groups.
A lot of us have read it recently.
And I'll add that I'm actually leading a reading group, so if anyone wants to join my reading group, I'll say that as
I'm leading one too.
Ooh.
I'll do the undergrads. You can do the grads.
Cool. No. Thank you guys again for coming. If you didn't get a button from either of them, they both have buttons. If you didn't get, I need to get a face button for you. Oops, sorry. Good job. I want to get Andrew Martin a face button. He didn't have. I don't know. Did he get it? Oh, I should turn this